create that initial hairstyle, and then we'll look at some of the brushes that we can use to sculpt and cut and trim our as we're going to use that as a way to grow hair on, as well as a collision object for later on. So let us just copy this just so we have a backup. And then I'm just going to take our selection tool here, making sure that only select visible elements is off. That way we can select all of these polygons here, and we just want this top part, the head, and a little bit down into the neck for use in collisions. So we're going to hit U and P, and that's going to separate out that selection, as you can see, into a separate object. So let's just hide this up here. So now our hair here. So we need to figure out exactly where we want the hair to be growing from. That's going to indicate where we want our hairs grown from. Okay. And we'll just go down here towards the neck. Don't want to get too close to just shrink this down. I'm holding the brackets keys to shrink up and down. And then just holding shift, we can add to our selection. And then just start to paint in some rough sideburn areas here. Oh, and make sure that when we're starting to paint on some fine details here, we actually want to turn only select visible back on, just so it's not selecting. And we want to set that selection. And what that's going to do is create a new tag for us that we're going to use to grow our hair. So if you just we're going to instantly have some basic hair. Okay. Tags hair collider. And that's letting the hair respond to the head that we have. the initial state of our hair. That way we can restart the simulation and continue on from there. But let's just start here. And then we'll just go through some of the different tools that we have here. So down here, one of the most important things is the selection type. So right now it's currently set to the tips. So you can see all these little dots here. So if we use the brush, which is right here, we're going just like everything in cinema. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of testing out and trying things. So but our guide's only at 1635, and that's based on the vertexes. All right. So now, in order to get a sort of straight cut bangs here, in order to, this is not a very and gives you all these different selection tools, which are separate from the ones up here. So these ones that we've been using for object. And then you can see if I just start to cut straight across by clicking and dragging, we can start to give our character okay. And now from this point, we can just use our brush tool here to massage things into place. So maybe I don't want the hair to be out so far here. You can just pull it in a little bit. Maybe I want there to be a bit more of a bob or a curl to these edges out here. Just trimming like this. Okay. So this is really great for just really customizing your hairstyle, and you can create some really interesting looks too if you're just using the cutting tool to just tailor your hairstyle. on their own, so that when we cut, let me just go back here, that when we cut, we only are cutting these. All right, so that's good enough for now. And then let's just look at the render real quick, just so we can see how things are looking with just this minimum amount of work so far. Okay. Just trim that off a little bit. Okay, we'll get back to our main view here. And then we can jump into some settings for this hair material. So when you create a hair object, it's going to create a hair material for you. And this is just the standard C4D hair material. So if you click on it down here in your materials palette, you can bring it up and change some basic things. You've got color. Are checked off when you first get in here. So we're going to be using these to help create some more realism, and once again add. Right now it's set to 1 and 0.1. I find this to be quite big, so I always pull this down to at least 0.04. And then we also have this curve graph here, and that's going to give some shaping to. So just dial this into something that you like and just hit a quick render. And then we can see what we've done by reducing the thickness. So you can see much finer hairs now. Okay. So that's how we can control the thickness. And then there's other things in here that we can utilize. Let's frizz setting, and you can dial that in. And you also have a curve amount here. So right now it's not affecting the top of the hair very much, but it's mainly affecting the tips. And you can also readjust these points if you wanted just the edge. I find that a little bit of frizz on the tips can really add some realism to it. Really softens up this bottom edge if that's what you're looking for. Okay. We've got kink as well, another thing that I'll use often. It gives you this sort of curled, almost different parts of the hair. And you can also hold control to add another point. So say I wanted to have you can just create a interesting curve in your graph like this. So you can see a bit of kink variation up here at the top, less so on these straight edges down the side, and then a bit more down here at the tips. Okay, and let's look at another one. So there's a bunch down here. Something else I like to use, displace. This gives you a bunch of different axes to work from, and then a displace value. On different axes. So you can see this is pulling the hair up or down on the y-axis. You can see totally covering the eyes up now. Or bringing it up like that. that creates some interesting variation for us. Hair can be quite messy, so let's see. Okay. We weren't going to be using the hair for the color, and that's because we're going to be using the redshift hair tag for that. So let's just drop that down and have a look. So over here in your materials, redshift materials, we've got hair. So let's just grab that, and we'll open up our shader graph. And instantly it tries to do this sort of conversion, I guess, between the hair attributes of the C4D hair object, hair material, excuse me, and the redshift hair. This works well. On our hair object, and we're just going to apply this so that the redshift hair object is on the right. And you're going to see and that's actually the transmission here. So this is that sort of backlit there, or just give a bit of brown and darken up the value. And I find that most of these default settings work really nicely. Something more like a wig, something synthetic. You could try out the diffuse as well. So very, very artificial looking, but an interesting look nonetheless, if that's what you're. Which is quite nice. And you also have a glossiness value here, which is controlling the sort of sharpness of the reflections to the hair. So hair position here. And this is going to give you the value along the, almost a ramp along this direction of the hair. So if we grab a ramp here and we set some colors here, so let's just do something very obvious so we can see what's going on. Go from pink to yellow, and we just drag the hair position. So I think I'm going to go a more natural route for this. So let's just try some less bold colors here. Something in the brown range. And you can also up your transmission here. Okay. Something like that. And then at this point, you can also see that we have some issues up here where there's some really harsh harsh angles on our hair. So if we wanted this to be smoother, we actually need to go into our different guide settings, and we need to up the segment count here. So just pull this up to 16, and we also want to do the same thing for the hairs. So maybe try 32. As you up the guide segments, that gives you more control with how we can sculpt the hair. So if we wanted everything to be a bit closer to the scalp, you can get the hairs even closer to the scalp. So oftentimes I'll just let it go for one frame and then go back to hair edit. Select these hairs, these guides. And just be careful with this tool. Sometimes it can go and then just let's see where we're at. Okay. Let's just get a quick render here. Okay, it's looking nice to me. And then we can start to bring back in our other elements, just objects, as we don't need to see that necessarily. So we just have the hairstyle here, and we've got a bit of excess down here in the back, which we can trim if we want to. But first, let's just pull our model back up. And there you can see we've got our hairstyle now, which is one second here. Nice looking hairstyle to go with our garment here. Reflections to the hair, more sheen. You can do that down here in the reflections. So you can see just upping that value just a little bit really increases the amount of light that's bouncing off of our hair here. So that's quite interesting. Just follow what looks nice to you. We're going with a really interesting sort of gray metal theme here, combining the metallic texture of our jacket, something going on with the hair and down into the shoes. So I'm quite liking this. So that's it for the basic hair introduction. This is a short, simple hairstyle.